Welcome to the See Me, Be Me podcast. I'm Nile Henry.
And I'm Blair Henry.
And we're two brothers who set out on a mission to make motorsport and STEM careers more diverse, affordable, and inclusive. We are the founders of the Blair Project.
This podcast series delves into the minds of inspirational individuals who come from ordinary and often humble backgrounds, but through their belief, dogged determination, and never give up attitude, have managed to overcome academic, social, or mental challenges to achieve their dream careers.
Our guests will share their life lessons that you too can apply to your own. We hope their stories will inspire you to go further, aim higher, and accept nothing less than you deserve. Your ambition, your purpose is all within, and we're here to help you unlock it. The planet of possibilities are endless.
You know who made it.
Hello and welcome to the See Me, Be Me podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by the marketing director of Wiser, Alex Ayin. Welcome to the See Me, Be Me podcast, Alex.
Thanks, gents. Looking forward to this one.
So, Alex, tell us, can you share your journey and how you got started in the field of marketing?
How I got started in marketing. Well, going back, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished school. Like probably a lot of people, everybody was pushing me to go to university. Yeah. Went to university, did a business degree because I knew that was quite broad. It wasn't specific. And also I didn't get into my medicine. I didn't get the grades for medicine. So did that for 4 years. And then when you go through a business degree, they then try and get you onto a graduate program. So I applied for Deloitte, KPMG, all of the big graduate programs. But the one that stood out for me the most anyway, because I wanted to go into something more entrepreneurial. I could tell that was something that was appealing and I was curious about, was Virgin. You see Richard Branson, you see what he's done, especially in this country. Yeah. Very inspirational. So I joined that for 2 years on their leadership program. Got to the second year when we moved around from sales to marketing to M&A to pricing. You do stints in each location around the company and also locations around the country. And at the time, I just was like, I can't see myself doing this in a big corporate organization for the next 40 years, 50 years. At that time, one of my good friends from school and somebody that I went to university with, Michael Heaven, had joined forces with some of the guys from Social Chain at the time. This is back in 2014. It was the transition between Warpark and Social Chain. It's a very small team. He was like, we've got these big social media communities. There's a lot of interest at the minute. We've just been featured on the front page of BuzzFeed. We can make anything trend. But the majority of the team are either kids, like 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, or people that have dropped out from university, school, etc. And obviously, Hev and me, we both went to Birmingham Uni, so he knew that I'd done a 4-year business degree and then a 2-year graduate program. So he's like, "Can you come in, help out from a commercial standpoint? How we then turn this more into a commercial operation? How does the sales look? What does the project management look like?" Yeah. We're starting to work with major brands, 20th Century Fox, Spotify, Apple. They expect a certain level of professionalism. And so that was kind of my journey into it. Way back then. So that was 2015.
Wow.
I just wanted to touch on, Alex, you mentioned in terms of in your childhood, what you wanted to be growing up, going through school and whatnot. Who were some of the role models in your life who helped to shape you into who you are today?
So when I come from a sport family. So both my parents working class. My mum's from Newcastle, a mining town. She moved to Manchester, the only person to go to university. So she stayed in Manchester, and my dad also his family come from Africa, from Ghana. And he again was the first person to go to university. So they both met in Manchester, stayed in Manchester. But my dad was a phenomenal rugby player. He played at high level, played like England schoolboy, played at Manchester for his career. So I grew up in a rugby environment. He was my coach. So I always wanted to play rugby. And also my mum, very good tennis badminton player, played at Wimbledon, so both sporty. So that was me. I thought I'm going to be a sports person growing up. Love sports. All I did was either play sports, train, watch sport. I got to when I was 13 and I had a growth spurt and had something called Achilles tendonitis. Went to the surgeon and he said, you can't run for at least 6 months, potentially a year. So in my formative years, that's all I kind of knew. And my identity was tied to being good at sport. At the time, I was moving into county level, doing relatively well, my rugby first team, etc. But that was a big blow for me mentally more than anything. Turns out, and I always think now that when there's big life moments or big change, I take it as there's going to be something there's always an opportunity to come from any setback you have in life. And at that time, when I couldn't run, I started swimming. When I started swimming, we had the new teacher came to the school who was ex-England water polo. So then I'm in the swimming pool. He's like, oh, so, you used to play rugby? I was like, yeah. So he then starts to train our team for the first time, sets up the water polo team. A guy called Simon Jones, phenomenal guy. He's still at the school that I went to as well. So he then was getting us into the aquatic centre at Manchester at 5 a.m. But bearing in mind, I'm like 13, 14 years old. Firstly, when he said that, I was like, I'm not going to do this. I was like, I can't get up that early. But anyway, I started going because it was the only thing I could do. Started training. Our team then started getting good. And he had this inspiring mission. He's like, we're going to be the best team in the country. And he said at every training session, he said, if you keep training now, because we train at 5 a.m., we then get to school and do school training 7 till 8, and then go to school start like 8:39. So you like knackered by the time the school started. But we did that 3 times a week. We had training after school and weights at lunch twice a week.
Wow.
But by the next year, we were under 14s national champions. Then we went under 16s national champions. Then we under 18s national champions. And Prince William dropped the ball in because he used to play water polo for the final. So in my mind, that was like I got from rugby to water polo. There was talks about, because this was 2008 when I finished school, and we were talking about the 2012 Olympics. Then funding was cut. Again, another negative. So then it's like, do I want to continue doing that, or do I go to university? I chose the university route because even if you went to the Olympics, obviously it would have been amazing. And 2012 was phenomenal in this country. But even then, we would have probably been the worst team, because the Eastern Europeans are the best at water polo. And then there's no money. There's no career post that. So that was a difficult decision. Went into university, and that's the journey from there. But yeah, like you say, the role models. I say Simon Jones, massive role model for me. My dad, he was my coach, the person I relied on. He was hard on me. And it wasn't necessarily, when I think back now on what he's like I've got 2 kids, with the grandkids, he's like a fun granddad. But my memories were the opposite. You can do more. This needs improving. Very critical. But I think has enabled me to be successful today in all areas of my life, because I sweat the small stuff. I'm always looking to get better. I have a growth mindset from a young age. It's not something that I've had to train. So yeah, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a sports person when I was younger.
Amazing. That was actually going to be my next question, actually, is that how did, because we've had guests who've come on the podcast and they've talked about, their sporting background helped them to kind of become the person that they are today. So whether it's that whole aspect of team working, or it's that competitive nature, which thinks, what, I'm going to go out there to be the best, which is, develop them into the positions that they've got to. That was going to be my question, is that has that helped shape you into the individual that you've become today? And are you still getting up at 5 a.m.? Has that still continued?
Yeah, my wife thinks I'm crazy. This morning I was up 5:15. But the team at work are like, why did you do that? And for me, that time in the morning, nobody can take that away from me. Whereas when I get into my day, when you're running a company, there's a million things, people, dramas, client situations that can just throw off your day. But so say I was trying to go to the gym after work, then that's leaving it to chance, and then I might not get a workout in. And I know from a mental health or my physical health that it's important for me to get in the zone. So I go, and I also like the fact I love Kobe Bryant. He's like one of my idols growing up. My son's actually called Kobe, but he was like, I will go training at 4 a.m. because I know that then I can get another session in at 8 a.m. That means I can do 4 sessions a day. Everybody else is doing 2, potentially 3. So if I'm already on your level and I'm doing 1 to 2 more sessions every single day, the marginal gains, the incremental difference between me and you is just going to keep going like this. You're going along this level, and I'm going to keep going along this level. And so I just adopt that mindset. And to your question about sport, I mean, I don't want to say what the general answers about teamwork and leadership, all of that stuff is true. The one thing which I don't think gets talked about enough, especially when you are going into an entrepreneurial pursuit, that sport really can teach you is belief.
Yeah.
Belief in something that's not proven, that's not guaranteed. Belief in your own abilities, even if you're losing, if you're down. I mean, I grew up in Manchester in the 90s, big United fan. Obviously, not so great being a United fan today. But in the 90s, it was unbelievable. And obviously, we had Alex Ferguson, the Beckham documentary just come out, so we could see some of the snippets. But I just remembered being a United fan and also playing sport, that no matter what was happening in a game, even if we were 2-0 down, 2 minutes to go, I was thinking, we could still win this. It's like delusional belief in your abilities and what the future can hold. And I think if you're going into a career, or like you guys are doing something that's not, there's no path there. It's not like someone might not have done it before. That's what sport can really give you, that belief in yourself. And if anyone's listening and wants someone who is the ultimate of belief, I'd Google or TikTok Coach Prime. Don't know whether you guys have seen Coach Prime in America.
No.
He's the most inspirational guy. He's probably one of the most successful sports people of all time. Won the Super Bowl multiple times. Was a top 5 college baseball player and NFL prospect. And then for the first 10 years played in the MLB as well as the NFL. Yeah. And there was one year where he had a Super Bowl and also the World Series, which is the equivalent in baseball. And so he was going from a World Series to then go and play in the Super Bowl and organizing his schedule. He was like one of the only athletes that's ever done that. So best college athlete, one of the best college athletes of all time, arguably one of the best people in his position. And now he's gone into coaching, and he's a phenomenal person on camera. So that's why I was saying, when some of his snippets are just so inspirational. He was saying the other day that in college, he's taken over a team that were only won 1 game all of last year. They then went into this season and they won 4. So they're like 4-4 now. I think they've lost 1 now. Yeah. And the reporters and the media and the negativity is like, you can't do this, you can't do it at this level. And he goes, what in the world? He's like, why in the world will I listen to what you think about me? Your opinion of me is not the opinion I have of myself. You didn't build me, so you can't break me. But like the belief that he has, and that then for his team, and then you think about from a business context or in a startup context, you as the leader need to believe it, number one, but also that is infectious. That is like your team need to believe it. A candidate who you want to join, or you're trying to persuade them to join the company, needs to believe it. Clients, investors, people need to believe that you can do this, and when you've not potentially ever had a track record before, when you're doing it for the first time. So I would say belief is one of the most underrated aspects which you can gain from coming from sports.
Now, Alex, we touched on the mindset and the importance of sport in almost building that sort of mindset. But what I wanted to touch on, based on your experiences, what would you say is the key to achieving high performance in the workplace?
High performance comes from a multitude of aspects. Number one, I think, is your principles and routines.
Yeah.
So if you think about any great sports team, business team, music act, they know exactly what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So what time they're going to eat, what time they're going to train, what needs to happen every single day. It's like being good consistently is much better than being great every once in a while. Whereas when you see YouTube and social media, really makes you think that just doing something unbelievable, scoring a last minute winner, that's like where true high performance is, where actually it's come from hours and hours and hours of consistent training, consistent work ethic, consistent habits. So I'd say that is number one. Number two, in order to be one of the best in any field, comes with a huge amount of sacrifice. And it's a choice. No one's got a gun to your head saying you have to be the best or you have to be a high performer, and that is okay. And just because I want to push myself, and it's something that I like to do, I never want to push that on anybody else, especially if they don't want to do it. So secondly, the sacrifice, not seeing your family. Like for me, now I've got 2 kids, it's hard. Being away from the kids is hard. I've not seen them in 3 days. I'll see them tonight, because I've been away with work. So, but for a business, for sports, it could be you're not allowed to have your favorite food. You can't have those Krispy Kremes. You can't have that, extra piece of chicken that you want to. So sacrifice is really important. And then thirdly, when you're thinking about your performance in the moment, I've just read Dan Carter's book, who's one of the best All Blacks of all time. And the concept, which was resonating with me so much when he talks about high performance, and also in a team context, is there's 2 zones that people will go into in high pressure situations. There's the blue zone, which is where you're cool, calm, collected. That's where you're not in the chimp. I don't know if you've read the chimp paradox. It's the opposite of the chimp paradox. That's the zone that you want to try and be in the majority of the time. But it's really important to know, to note that isn't reality for you to live in there 100% of the time. You're going to go into the red zone, and the red zone is where the chimp comes out, you react, and you go to 3 different areas. Number 1, fight. So he said he used to play with Ma Nonu as his inside centre. He was a big islander. He was like, Ma would just fight, and he would see red, mist would come off in the game. Number 2 is flight. A lot of players that he played with would fake an injury or want to see an exit, pull a sick day in a work context, get out of the situation. That's number 2. And then number 3 is freeze. And he said he would freeze. And this talks to different personality types, because he was very introspective as a person, especially in a rugby context, and in his position is not what you'd imagine. But he would go into where he wouldn't communicate to his team, he'd just go very quiet on the pitch. And he said the best thing that you can then do to try and get out of those zones is to focus on what's next. So ask Ma Nonu, who's the next tackle you're going to make? Where should we go in the pitch? Because then that breaks the cycle and moves you back into blue, where you're having to use your rational brain. And he said for him, he even he had external triggers where he tap himself on the legs. If you watch any old clips of Dan Carter and you see him tapping his knees or tapping his thighs, that's what he was doing to try and click himself out of that zone, because he knew he was going into it. So questions, asking people what you're going to do for the next 24 hours or the next play, because you can do that in business. If you had a hard day or something's gone wrong, it's like, well, what can you now do? And it focuses your mind, so you're not thinking about what the press going to say, what's my parents going to think, what's my teammates going to say, think about me when I'm not there. And it focuses you on the moment in the present, which is obviously from a mindfulness perspective so important. And I think in order to be at a high performance level, you need to recognize your form and where you're dipping in and out, and have the ability and the self-awareness and the team around you to get you back into the blue zone, and also for you to get them back in. So knowing them as well, because we're all different, and helping them get back into where they're in a high performance area.
No, I'm gonna have to read that book, because essentially that was really great. It's just about being forward planning, and I think always thinking next steps. So rather than being in the rather than just being there and just think, oh, what am I going to do? Just like, right, okay, this could happen or this could happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Because scenarios planned out.
Because what happens in life, if you think about because obviously I think is it still mental health awareness? I don't know when this is going to come out, but it's mental health awareness weeks or month now. Yeah. And a lot of the the anxiety and the stress comes from the thought of the future,
Yeah.
or the trauma of the past.
Or the past.
Yeah. So they're like the kind of like the two things. So if you can get yourself into the present, which is no mean feat, by the way, it's not easy to. I'm saying this as if it's like, I'll just do that and it's easy. But if you can recognize yourself, your own internal triggers, your own external triggers, 95% of things that we think are going to happen don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And a great way to, an old mentor said this to me when I was worrying about pitching and things going wrong. He said, just write down over the last 6 months how many things you've worried about, and then on the left-hand side, and he said, then write down on the right-hand side how many of those things actually went wrong. Did you lose that contract? Did you not be able to afford your rent? Did you, anything? And actually, when you analyze it with the rational in that blue state, it actually gives you so much confidence. Actually, this might be my mind, and my mind is the worst. Like tricking me into worrying about something which I either can't control or probably won't happen.
I know, and I used to be like that quite in my younger entrepreneurial days. One of the things you worry about the most is the rejection. You go in towards having those meetings, trying to get those opportunities, and you think, oh, come on, please go, please happen, and then you don't get it, and it's like, you feel deflated. But then you just realize that, what, it's not always gonna go to plan. Like things are gonna happen this way. And then sometimes further down the line, when other opportunities come, you look back and you think, oh, thank God that didn't happen. Or else, it might have been in a more trickier situation, or it might not have gone to plan. But it's learning how to overcome those barriers and just thinking, do you know what? Is this the worst thing that could happen in life?
Exactly.
Yeah. Is this going to really break me? No, you're just going to move on and move on to different things. So talking about moving on, Social Chain. You joined Social Chain at the very beginning. How, in terms of the team size at that point, how big was the team?
Team was probably around 10 to 20 people.
10 to 20 people. And did you join as a marketing director then, Alex?
No. I mean, back then we did. Everyone does everything back then. In the startup world, there was no kind of like clear roles defined. When I joined, we were in a shared office space, and we're about to move into the office, which everyone will know, with like the slide, ball pit, basketball court. But there was just 2 desks in a shared office the first time I went in to see all the guys. So very small team. But the thing that resonated with me the most is everybody was ambitious. And I was, at the time, I was young, ambitious, carefree. I was very fortunate because I could move home. So I was living in London. I was actually living in Reading, I think, at the time, on the graduate scheme. Whereas I could move home, not take a salary. And not everybody can do that. So I felt very fortunate I could do that, invest into something that I was curious about at the time. But we didn't necessarily have everything thought out in terms of how the operation worked, how the team worked. I say that there was foundations there, but we were very much trying to figure out what was the commercial model. How would we? Because at the time we would do big campaigns, but then it would be like spiky revenue, which nobody tells you about. You really could do some recurring revenue that's going to cover your costs for salaries, office, the operation working effectively, tech costs, all that stuff that people don't tell you about. And then if you do get a spike of revenue or a big campaign, then that's like an additional benefit, because then that's going to take you into the profit zone. So yeah, the early days were interesting, but the thing that really put us on the map was BuzzFeed had done the article about us trending. We can make anything the number 1 trend in less than half an hour. And this was pre-fake news, like pre-Trump. This is 2014, 2015. So it wasn't as much of a negative thing as it is in today's world. And in 2015, when I joined, we were speaking at a football conference. I organised it with a guy called Marcello, great guy. Now runs a big media company out in Australia. He's Australian, but he was at SoccerX, and he was like, "Come and speak here. it's a traditional audience. You've got FIFA, we've got all the Premier League clubs, we've got all sports rights holders, got a lot of brands there, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, etc. So we're like, okay, we're going to go speak there. On the Sunday night, we were speaking on the Monday, and we had a dinner with everybody on the Sunday night. We thought we need to do something which is going to be remarkable, set ourselves apart, everybody talking about us, bounce around a load of ideas. Then we went to our sports team and said, well, what's happening now in sport? And at the time, Arsene Wenger hadn't spent any money on an outfield football player. He'd only bought Czech, the goalkeeper at the time. Everyone's on his back. Arsene's, you're too old now, you've lost it, So right. We pulled a GIF of a South American player, which ran on Twitter, where he goes past the last defender, chips the goalkeeper. It was unbelievable. Looked like Messi. It was so good, and you couldn't really see his face very well. So we pulled that, and then we pulled some images of this guy who now this guy's blown up. He must think, oh my god, who am I? And we put graphics of comparing him against Diego Costa, Drogba, other famous strikers at the time, if stats. And then we made up that he was that Arsenal just bought him for £36 million, and he was only 16 years old. We started talking about it on that Sunday. It starts to gain a bit of traction. We thought, oh, this is good. By the Sunday night, it was on Sky Sports. Piers Morgan, who's a big Arsenal fan, was talking about it. Starts to trend globally. Then everyone in Arsenal's getting asked about it. Now, if you search for this player, and we called him Rex Echo, and the conference was called Soccer X, so it was like an anagram of all the letters in Soccer X. Now he's got something like 6 million search results, when you search for Rex Echo. So he blew up. Everyone was like, who's this new wonder kid? Oh my God. And then on the Monday, Steve got up on stage and just announced that everyone just go on your phone and just type in Rex Echo. Some of you might have heard him. Well, this is us. And we had a picture of us coming up with the idea and putting it live the night before. And from that moment, everybody in that room was captivated, and that's where we started to springboard. That story went completely viral across all the media. We were asked to speak on BBC, Sky. We started working with all those brands, Nike, Adidas. They flew us out to Germany to speak to all their top team, and that's where there's a real start of traction, and some serious conversations happened off the back of that.
Wow. So was that all in terms of that marketing strategy and that campaign? That was all in 24 hours, less than 24 hours.
Yeah. You say strategy. I wouldn't necessarily call it. I wouldn't necessarily call it strategy. At the time, and it wasn't my expertise. The content team were phenomenal, and they just got Twitter and they got Facebook. Back then, they were building pages, and they would grow to 250,000 followers in a week. They just understood virality. They understood how to build an audience around a topic which people cared about. And that is something actually which is transferable now to anybody listening. We had football pages, rugby pages, travel pages. We had Harry Potter fan pages. It can be whatever niche. We had cat pages, and the internet's enabled this massive amount of communities for people to feel part of something in something really specific, a niche like. And so if you can tap into it, either create it yourself, which is quite time intensive to build and maintain a community, but even if you just know who they are, so say you're trying to go after a specific audience of cat lovers, there's about 1 million pages now on Instagram, YouTube, influencers, faceless, and also faces of these cat pages that you can then go to because they've got trust and credibility within that demographic, and they can potentially get your product service in there. And that's what we knew better than anybody. We knew how to get a brand without it seeming like an advert, to come across to an audience which didn't like advertising. And I think that is crucial. So for example, when we were a lot of tech companies and apps would come to us back then and said, can you get millions of people to talk about our app and download our app? There was one called Tippy Tap, very addictive game, but it's you going against, Candy Crush and all these major units in the app store. We've got millions of in ad spend. And so what we did, instead of telling everyone to download it, we told everyone not to download it. We were to all our student pages, don't download this game. You're going to fail your degree. So addictive. To the sports communities, we were this is one of the most competitive games. I wouldn't even try because the leaderboard, it's impossible to get on the leaderboard. And that message, then everyone's like intrigued.
Yeah.
What is this? And then off the back of it, it trended number 1. It went to number 1 in the App Store, head of like Facebook, Twitter, all the major players for 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Massive success. And then we did a load more with the company that owned them. But it's thinking in that way, thinking what does the customer or the person I want to speak to, because I hate saying customer, everyone's a person, what's going to be their opinion of what they see?
Yeah.
And would it make sense? Will they think I'm trying to get them to do something? Because it's like anything. If anyone tries to get me to do something, I don't want to do it. Whereas if I make the decision myself and have autonomy, then I'm much more likely to stick or use it or download it or go to the cinema to watch it, whatever the thing may be. But it's thinking in that way slightly differently is what really helps us as an agency.
The old-fashioned reverse psychology.
It's all up here, isn't it? Yeah.
I wanted to ask Alex, based on your experience at Social Chain, what would you say would be the biggest lesson, or should you say learning curve, from your experience working at Social Chain that you've taken with you from that experience to where you are now?
Okay, I've got a serious one and a funny one. The funny one, we're in year 1. At the end of year 1, we're taking everybody paintballing, literally the whole company, probably like close to 100 people at the time.
Wow.
On the way to paintballing in the morning, start getting messages on email. We want to cancel the contract. Thinking, oh my God, what's happened here? And it was 20th Century Fox. It was, who else was it at the time? I think it was Spotify. There was like 3 or 4. We're like, this seems strange that it's all just happening like immediately. It's like, we were bold in big, we want to end the contract. Anyway, clicked onto it and we'd been hacked. And I don't know whether it was an ex-employee, which we still think it might have been, because they were quite specific messages, but they'd basically been sending messages to our clients with very graphic detail, insulting them and saying horrendous things.
Wow.
So that was one of the biggest lessons, because we didn't have two-factor authentication off. We didn't have a process when someone leaves the company to like get their emails back. And we literally lost 40% of our clients in the morning, and we have to then go, and obviously we can't tell the team, and it's like a team day. And so that was one of the biggest and the hardest things I think we ever experienced, because we were still relatively young there. So it was, we weren't an established business. We didn't have lots of cash reserve. So that was a challenge. So make sure you have your Google two-factor authentication on. And then number 2, I would say, would be in the form of building teams. That's something that I've enjoyed the most, is how you can turn a team into a high performance unit that actually care about each other. And when I was in the corporate world, you very much felt like a number. I know everybody says that, but it is true.
Yeah.
And often the people above me at the time cared about what I could do for them, because I was this bright grad coming in. There was 6 of us that were chosen, 6,000, 7,000 people had applied. There's 6 of us on this program. What can you do to help us do X? We're going to give you some training here. We're going to do this. But ultimately, we want you to come in and do this. Whereas from Simon Jones, the coach, he would care about my family, how my mum was, how my gran was doing. He'd pop round with things. If I was off on a day, he'd take me to a side. He'd have we'd go for a walk and talk. He cared about me. So when it came to playing, or if I was injured, or if I was sick, the amount of times I trained when I was sick, and it's probably not good in today's world to say to push that forward, but I did that for him.
Yeah.
I did that for him and the team, because I didn't want to let him down. I didn't want to let the team down. And so that's what I've always tried to do, is build a culture within any of the teams that I'm a part of, where I actually generally care about how that person's doing outside of work, their fitness, their health, their relationships, their career progression. And as a byproduct, I think that's enabled some of like even people that I've managed in the past who've now gone to set great businesses. I've still got a great relationship with them when I see them, or when I saw a couple of them at a conference last week. And that for me is what I want to be remembered for. If
Yeah.
I think about what then enabled us to beat the competition, and we were all, especially at Social, we were very young compared to agencies, people that had done that for it. So why were we able to win? Why were we able to win all these awards? Why were we able to grow so fast? And I think that's it. We cared about each other as people, and we were ambitious, but more than anything, we cared about each other. And if someone was having a down day, we would jump in, we would take the slack, and because I know they would do it for me. And that's, I think, is for a high performance environment, that's one of the easiest things that you can do. Sounds so simple on the surface, but if you ask yourself how many times you asked, if you really had a deep conversation with somebody in your team, probably like once a month, if that, maybe like once every 2 weeks. Whereas if you can like continually check in with them weekly, do the little things, like for example, someone's ill in Wiser now, the happiness team will send them a wellness box. But it won't just be a wellness box. It's because on HiBob you put like your favorite things, like what bath salts you like, what your favorite music is. So it'll have those personalized things. So it doesn't just feel like, oh, I'm getting a generic thing. It's like personalized to you, showing that we care about you.
Yeah, and you know what, for you know, I want to keep on this topic about building high performance team. What else what if, you know, small businesses, sometimes one of their problems is that because they're so small, they're having to do multiple different things, or you know, you're trying to get as many opportunities. How can you also build a high performance team without sacrificing, if you understand what I'm saying, the opportunity? Like, you're trying to obviously bring a team on board, but it's sometimes it's hard as the CEO to find the time to do that. Is there any other ways that you think you could do that, being an entrepreneur and trying to still keep everything going, but maintaining the morale of the team?
So when you asked that question, the one thing that immediately came to mind was focusing on the things which you are uniquely great at. So if I was to ask you, Nile, what are the things that you can do as the founder, as the CEO, that other people can't do? What would you say the top 3 things are?
So the top 3 things that I would want, just repeat that question, that I'd want my team to be able to do.
No. The top 3 things that only you could do that somebody else couldn't do in your team. So for example, you being able to go into an investor meeting and convince an investor for money, that's probably only you two that could do that as founders. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, pitching, I would say probably like the ability to articulate and pitch and believe it as passionately as you do, because you've lived it, you've breathed it. Other people can do it. I'm not saying what are the things that other people can't do. It's like, what are the things which you are uniquely positioned, which you are probably the best at doing?
So I'd honestly say selling the vision, you know, doing, you know, enticing people to want to work with the Blair Project, because the Blair Project, obviously it's named after Blair, but it's a story of 2 brothers. So I think that works a lot. I think.
What would you say, Blair? What would you say for Nile?
3 things. Yeah, I'd say it'll be on the lines of just like pitching, selling to investors, and then it's also,
I think it's also more the innovation as well. Like what we're really unique at is brainstorming and coming up with new ideas that. We're really good at coming up with innovation and exploiting it as well.
I guess it's just like also bringing like partners together on like different projects. It's just like making like the right links to like different organizations coming together to collaborate and whatnot. It's just these different ideas that we bring on board.
So what I'm hearing,
I think the last one, just to say, is the braggadocious aspect of saying, you know what, you take something and just run with it. And where some people would just say, no, that can't be done. Like, no, like I think one of the things that the team finds so inspiring is to say that, you know what, wow, we're just going to go and do it. And be like, oh, wow, you pulled this one off. And even for like the young, yeah, even I think a lot of young people that we've worked with as well, from Black and Asian backgrounds, it's being those role models as well, and for them to see somebody that looks like us, because quite a lot in the tech sector, in STEM and engineering, like you don't see too many people that look like us. So it's
Yeah.
saying, wow, there actually are Nile and Blair involved in net zero green tech. If they can do it, then there's a possibility we can as well.
Yeah. And that especially is only really something that you can do. You're like uniquely positioned to do that. It's in your zone of genius, especially when Blair was talking there about the partnerships, bringing people together, the young people looking up to you both, like the inspiring speeches, the vision, the pitching to investors. And then so what I would do is do that for yourself. If you're an entrepreneur or a CEO or someone that's building a small business, what are your superpowers? It's a great book called Spike by one of my mentors, Rene Carriol. He goes into this in a lot of detail. But think about what your superpowers are. Lean into them, and then either try and build a team where they can do the things which you're not as strong at, or the things which for example, for me, it's not the things that you don't want to do. But if I'm writing a project plan, I could write a really good project plan, but because I've done it a million times now. But am I the best person to do that in the organization? Probably not. And now with the birth of the internet, you can get a VA, a virtual assistant, to do a lot of those tasks which are on your plate especially for an entrepreneur of a small business. There'll be so many menial things which you're doing on repeat, which you can now either get AI to do, get support from a virtual assistant, which will be very cheap in comparison to hiring somebody, or bring on a team who's an expert at that thing, who's better than you at that, whether it's marketing, finance, accounting, whatever it may be. So that's what I would, because you'll be wearing a million hats, but really every major entrepreneur I've spoke to from like some of the biggest companies in the world, the biggest startups in the world.
Yeah.
Like I was at Gymshark yesterday, and Ben mainly is in and around the design team, the design, the product, the new product development, the innovation, what it looks like, what it feels like. But he could go into a million things. He could go into the marketing, and I'm sure he does on a regular basis. But when I was speaking to the team, they're like, "This is where Ben will spend a lot of the time." So go to the thing where you are uniquely positioned to deliver greatness. What's your zone of genius? And try to build a team / infrastructure with AI virtual assistants that can support on the other areas, so that you can focus on being the best version of yourself in your area of genius.
Just again, Alex, I wanted to just touch on the mindset again. So I wanted to just ask, just before you started, went into social chain, you're working for Virgin. So what is the difference between the pressures of working for an organization or company like Virgin to your experiences working at a startup like social chain?
In big corporations, there are some just historically, there've just been a lot of politics, which makes sense, because you have a lot of money at stake, you have egos from different teams, you have lots of opinions and mixture of experiences and backgrounds, and people think their way of doing things is right, especially when of a company that's over, say, 1,000 people. And so I would say that is one of the main differences. Trying to navigate that situation from a mindset perspective is very, very, very difficult. And a lot of things happens slower. It needs to go through this process. This person needs to see it. This leadership team needs to approve it. Whereas in a smaller organization, especially in a startup, the biggest difference is the ability to take quick risks and bets. I call them, how many bets? I said this to the team the other day. I was like, what are the 6 bets that we're going to make for this half, going into the second half of the financial year? So it's like, what are the 6 bets? And it could be, we bet that TikTok is going to get to this amount of influence, where it's not just used as a search platform for millennials, but older generations are also using it. So then if we know it's going to become a search platform, people won't necessarily be going to search for jobs on Google anymore. So how can we then start creating content as a byproduct for search on TikTok? That could be a bet. What are the other bets? About the market, about the team, and your bets, they're not all going to be right. So say out of the 6, I would expect from a high performance team, and I said to the guys in our leadership team, let's try and get 2 right let's try and fail on 2. Not try and fail, but I reckon 2 will probably fail. So we need to be ambitious enough that 2 will probably fail, but we'll take really good learning from them, and 2 will probably do okay. But if the 2 that succeed go to the levels where we think they will go, that can be a transformational point of the business.
Yeah.
So what are the bets that you're going to make? And if you look at it and think about it from a mindset like bets, you'll take more risks. And the hardest thing about the corporate world is you don't take risks. So then you start to slow down the decision-making process, and then that's where you get startups taking a lot of your market share. The hardest thing about taking bets and risks in a startup is if you make too many wrong ones consistently, that will define you as a company. And especially from a cash flow perspective, you could go out of business. So analyzing it, saying, right, these are the bets I'm going to make for the next 6 months. This is what I'm going to judge success on. Because most people don't necessarily track metrics. They'll track, right, I want to make £1 million. I want to bring in £1 million over the next 6 months in the business in this area. And then it's like, yes, that's an output metric. What are the 3 to 5 input metrics? For example, one could be, I'm going to speak to 1 partner a week and try and onboard 1 per month. I'm going to develop a killer case study deck so that every time someone sends me this reply, because every time we pitch them, they've always asked for case studies, I'm going to create the best case study deck in the world. I'm going to do and so then you focus on the inputs, which are going to get you to that output metric, and then your bet making ability and your decision making ability and your tracking of it over time, like any goal, becomes much better. Because the worst thing you don't want to do is run out of cash, which is the majority of why the main reason why the majority of startups fail. And if you have the metrics, like I've just mentioned there, in place, and you have certain financial targets, certain operational targets, strategy targets, marketing targets, I find it, the people that I've worked with, it's very difficult to fail then if you're going towards something which is aligned to the wider vision.
Yeah. No, completely agree with that. Yeah, having that objective, but breaking it down into steps. So it's great thing I read say begin with the end in mind. So you want to get to that goal. I'll break it down how you're going to get there, reversing it. And that's what we use within the Blair Project. And not everything is, like you said, not everything's going to go to plan, but at least have different things. But you have to, as an entrepreneur, be willing to take risks. Because if you don't take risks, you're either missing out, or you could literally just run out of business, go out of business.
Go out of business, Take that. Let's do one thing on that. What's one goal that you can share with the audience which is not sensitive?
So one of the goals that we're trying to do is, and this is public knowledge, we're looking to develop the world's first hydrogen edtech training platform.
Nice.
To be the global application that everybody will use to learn about hydrogen skills virtually.
And from a time bound perspective, when are you trying to have created that by?
So by Q2 of 2025, we should have that app fully live and ready to go.
This is great. Okay, so Q2 2025. Question, and this is a question that I would ask everybody when they're thinking about their goals and you've got them written down. Go, how can I either 10x that goal? Obviously yours, you can't do that because it's like creating something. So if it's a financial figure or if it's a numerical, you can say, well, how can I 10x that? But for your one, how could you do that in the next 6 months?
Well, we have explored a way of doing that. I'm looking to raise amounts. I don't know if I can mention, but we're looking to raise a certain amount of investment, foreign, international, so that we can, be able to expand on that to the next level. So we've received some funding to develop the initial, but to build upon that, to incorporate other aspects of training within the platform, rather than just standalone hydrogen. It will take some investment. So I'm already forward planning
investment
on
how to get that in. And that, for everybody listening, that is the number one thing to advance your mission, your business quicker, faster, and get people more excited about where you're going, is usually we'll think about what we can achieve based on our past experience and based on what the competitors have done. Whereas if you reason up from first principles today and go, right, well, if I want to get here, how do I do that? Rather than in 2 years, 3 years, how do I do that in 6 weeks or in 6 months? There'll be a way, usually, like either like you just said, financially or operationally or partnerships or connections. And then it's like, well, could I just do that now? You know, like if my say my son or my daughter's life was on the line and I needed to get cancer treatment or something in the next 6 months, and it was £20 million. I don't have £20 million, but you're damn best I'd probably get that £20 million because it was meaningful enough to me. It was worthwhile enough to me. And so I always think about that. Someone said that to me ages ago, and I always try and apply that to business now and think, if the business or your goal is meaningful enough to you, how could you do it quicker, faster, bigger, more impact within a shorter time period?
Well, I'm on that process. A little small goal as I'm trying to lose some weight and improve on my fitness. So I've given myself, set myself a weight goal. I'm not going to announce what I am currently, but I'm trying to get down to about 77 kg.
You're doing well, though. You're doing well.
I'm doing well.
Great,
I'm sticking. It's about discipline. It's about discipline. So
that's what it is. Sacrifice, discipline.
Sacrifice, yeah. Goes tied into the opening part of the conversation. You know, sacrificing, you know, going out and eating junk food, or, you know, going to networking events and having a couple of drinks. You do things because you want to improve your lifestyle. But it's about, taking it serious. There is 2 more questions, Alex, I do want to ask you though. One is again from marketing, and the second one is just about in general, you know, being an entrepreneur or recruitment, hiring people. First one is, you know, let's say someone listening to this wants to set up their own business, and, you know, they've generated some revenue and they're thinking about their first hire within the company. You know, what should an individual look out for, or they want to hire somebody? What are the first steps that they should take?
Okay. First steps is identifying what are the 5 key things which that role is going to help do. Whereas most people, and it's what has been drilled into us, is like build this whole job description where it's like, actually, what are the 5 things that in a year's time, if we have achieved these things, it would be this role, us hiring this role would be a massive success. So I'd write those down. Number 2, if you haven't already, codify the behaviors you want from people that are joining your team from a cultural standpoint, but also from a, like we were talking about as well, Blair, like mindset. Yeah. So say you wanted, like the goal that you just mentioned there is very like innovative, and you're trying to create something new. So you'll then, I would imagine, be wanting someone that is willing to push the boundaries, to think outside the box, to test things, to iterate, you know, to think about the types of behavior or your characteristics that the team would need in order to go where the vision is, which you're trying to create. And often people don't necessarily think about that. That's one thing I don't think people think about enough, is like, what are the cultural behaviors and principles that we need to believe and live? Like a social chain, it's an ever-changing landscape, so we always took risks, you know, and we would make bets. Culture was more important to us than finances. You know, these were the things, and that us having that enabled us to people to feel more safe to take these risks and to push things and to suggest ideas and to do things for the culture, to go above and beyond, to think about where you're trying to go, what you're trying to achieve, what are the behavioral characteristics you need, and what are the 5 things they need to do. Then from a like a practical standpoint, the majority of your hires in the early days will be from people that you know and referrals. Yeah. So identify the mission and the purpose and the vision and bring that to life so much in like a video and in copy and written words, because people will buy into that aspect. And then number 2, think about what's in it for them. So it could be you joining us now, you're going to get access to both the co-founders, you know, who've been there, lived it, breathed it, done it, which you won't get in another organization, even like a 200 person, 300 person, 400 person company. You're going to get day to day in the weeds, doing the operations, learning from us. That's something unique. That's a unique selling point. What are the other 5 or 6 unique selling points? Because often you won't be able to compete on pay, especially against big corporates. But there will be things like that which are like really valuable.
And my final question, Alex, before we hop into the bonus questions, you know, we've talked, I think you mentioned a little bit about AI earlier.
Yeah.
And with the advancement of AI and automation evolving, what opportunities do you think that this presents to companies of any size?
So one of
in terms of marketing?
in terms of marketing, I got a couple of things. So from a marketing perspective, we've used AI for years in terms of targeting, building lookalike audiences. You just haven't known it. So I think that will just get better. Understanding the consumer, what they want. You know, like people talk about ads and, you know, cookies. I actually quite like the fact that I get given Nike trainers, which I might want to buy. You know, I want it to be personalized. You know, it might be an anomaly, but I think it's useful. And that will just continue and continue and continue. But from a company or a business perspective, one process or exercise to do is to, it's like the McDonald's model. I don't know if you've seen the film The Founder, but just write out all the different processes, all the way from someone knowing about you from a marketing and brand perspective. What does that process look like? Do they find out about me from PR or from social media or from typing my name into SEO or podcasts? What's the process for awareness? What's the process for conversion? So once they know me and they've hit the website or they're following me on social, what's the then conversion rate down to then us having an actual conversation and then building an opportunity? Who's involved within the team? What does that process look like? Then once they join, then once we convert them, what's the onboarding? What's the client onboarding? If someone buys a product, if you're a B2C, what does that onboarding process look like? The email follow-up. Then like the advocacy piece, how can you get them to talk about it, shout about it, repeat purchase? How can you keep them for the long term? And just have and then the finances, how do you charge? How do you bill? How does the finance team collect the money? Is it all through payments? Is it, you know, whatever it may be? And if you're in brick and mortar, like how does that work in store? And then you'll have maybe 10 fundamental processes throughout the company. And I would build them on a PowerPoint deck and just have like 2 or 3 slides for each one. Which team's involved? What are the steps? And what does great look like? Who's doing it great in the world? And it could be you. You could be doing it the best in the world. But if not, just write down what you currently do, and then also write down on the next slide, what is the best company in the world doing this right now doing? And then once you have those, that's when I'd go at it from an AI lens and think, how can I either use AI to enhance one of these processes to make it quicker, faster, better, cheaper? Or is there a process which AI could completely take over and completely, you know, free up somebody else's time to do something else? Yeah. And having that across the almost like the foundations of your company is just a great exercise to do.
Absolutely. I can see from a company point of view. Would it not be scary though for people who are already involved in marketing that it could literally, as you say, it could automate everything so that there might not be a need for a marketing person within a company? Or do you think it'll never get to that point?
I think AI is such an interesting conundrum, because the way I look at it is, say you're in marketing, if you can become the expert at AI, it's going to make your copywriting better, it's going to make your ideas better, it's going to make everything quicker, faster, better. Yeah. And then as a byproduct, you can then elevate quicker. You'll then progress in your career faster than your average person that isn't using it or isn't trying to learn it. And the fact that it's scary gives you a competitive advantage, because the majority of people will have that approach. They'll be like, oh, AI is going to take over, like creativity is always going to win, all this stuff. Like it can never make videos or assets as good as me. When in reality, you're not living in reality. That's, you can think that, and that's an emotional reaction. But if you were rational, if you were back to that blue brain from Dan Carter, that isn't true. And we're probably scratching the surface of its capabilities now. So because it's such a beast, I would try and understand it, become an expert at it, see how it can make all your marketing function better. And that's what we're doing. Like, for example, one of the things we've done is we've created a proofreader from GPT-4. So we've given it all of the tone of voice for, say, like wiser. And so now when we write a piece of copy, we then put it through there. So then there's no grammatical mistakes, which humans can do. There's been mistakes and copies gone out and it's like a spelling mistake. Yeah. But also it knows our tone of voice and language. So it checks for that. And then it doesn't change the copy. It just says, this is what I would suggest based on what you've given me. And so now every time it's like a filtering process to make sure it's like 3 sets of eyes so we don't make a silly mistake on a press release or a social media post or whatever. So I would just try and find the methods like that where it can make you perform at your absolute best or make things quicker for you.
Yeah, no, I think it's been one of the most useful tools to assist in, and that's what it's there to do. It's meant to assist you in your role rather than, completely take over. But the technology is just getting better and better. But we're at that point now, Alex, where we're going to have to go into the bonus questions. And like I said, I do ask 3 questions to all my guests. Depends on whether you get past the first question, because I will judge you on that. So no pressure. And we're about to crack in. So Blair, please, drum roll. Right, Alex, does pineapple belong on a pizza?
Only with ham.
That wasn't my question, Alex. Does it belong in general?
Yeah. Does it belong on a pizza? I would say no.
You passed the first question.
We're going to go to 2 and 3 now. You've answered my question. That was fantastic. We've had about 6 people. I think you're the 20th guest on the podcast, I believe. 6 people have said yes, that should be. And they will never come back on this podcast again. No,
they're banned. They're banned.
They're gone. They're gone. Yeah. No, great stuff. Right, second one. If you could throw a dinner party this evening, obviously I know you're going back home to see the wife and the kids, but let's just say, for example, you're going to throw a dinner party, right?
Yeah.
And you can invite 4 people, dead or alive, could be celebrities, could not be famous. Oh. Who would you invite?
Okay, number 1, Kobe Bryant. Mm-hmm. From a mindset perspective, I'd like to get his take on resilience in this world, with the social media generation coming through, especially for my kids. I want to try and navigate that. So I'd have him.
The Mamba mentality.
Mamba mentality, yeah. I would. I'd just be interested to get into the mind of Steve Jobs. And I know a lot of people would say that because of Apple, but for me, it's like, if you think about the journey and how he was let go, and then the Pixar element, that I think you could learn so much from that whole experience that he went through. Yeah. So he would be number 2. Who else? Because there's so many people. It's only 4. I would. You know what? My third one would be my grandparent, because I didn't meet my granddad from Africa. So, and if I think about my life, he moved to London for a better life for the family. And so I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him and that bold decision. So I'd just like to find out about his history, what that process looked like, moving to a new city, that whole thing. So he would be number 3. And then my 4th would be to bring up the mood, because they can do jokes. They're also quite entertaining. And I also would want to ask them about the slap. Would be Will Smith. Why did it? I grew up with Fresh Prince. So obviously what's happened recently is he's gone down in a lot of people's estimations, mine included. But his journey, his story, I think is very inspirational. And he has so many different layers to him as a human being, acting, comedy. And I think he'd bring a fun dynamic to the mix.
No, Will Smith is one of the most talented people, like former rapper, actor. He's done a lot.
Yeah,
He's done a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. So Will Smith, your granddad, Steve Jobs, and it was Kobe Bryant.
Kobe Bryant, yeah. Yeah.
Very, 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 very interesting table. I'd like to be
Yeah.
at a dinner table.
I tell you what, if I was going to do one more bonus person, the person that I respect the most, who's still alive in his field, that's done incredible things both inside and outside the field, is Denzel Washington. So he would be someone that I'd love to have at a dinner table. I'd actually exchange him if I had to exchange. He'd be taking Will Smith's seat if there was a coin flip.
Oh, do you know what? This is I've never told this one before, but I used to, like, for a good solid 6 months last year, I used to listen to motivational quotes by Denzel Washington.
He's so good, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's so good. He's so good.
Just the way his mind works.
That stuff would just get me pumped and ready for the day. Some of the way he delivers his talks, his speeches, like in films, it's just so powerful.
I love Denzel Washington's portrayal of Malcolm X in the Malcolm X film that came out 20 something years ago. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, so good. And you think about the range of films he's been in, like that to Man on Fire. He's been in just some phenomenal movies. Yeah.
Yeah, Man on Fire gave me. There's a certain scene in Man on Fire that's still,
that's one of my favorite films.
Twitch. Yeah. I watched that at a very young age, and it was a great film, though. Very great film. Yeah, but last question, Alex. If you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give to the younger Alex? Maybe at 15, 12. What advice would you give?
Great question. I would say take more risks based on what you care about the most. And the reason why I say that is I was influenced, especially at that age, by what I should do. Like, I should go to university. I should do the graduate scheme. And if I think about that, that's 6 years of my life, and I had a good time. It's not like I hated it, but I think if I'd have done what I wanted to do and pursued my own curiosity and my own passions more, I would have gotten much further in a short period of time. In a time where you don't have a mortgage, kids, responsibilities. So I would try and take, if I was advising a younger person today, try and take as many small bets and small risks and explore as many careers and paths and passions that you have as possible, like before you're 20, so that from your 20s onwards, you can really then start honing in and becoming the best in the world at the thing which you love the most.
So yeah, definitely. If you're a young person listening to that, I would wholeheartedly agree. Because sometimes, at 18, you don't always know what you want to do.
No.
So you might as well explore different things. Like I said, take risks, see if they work. Because doesn't matter if you fail. It's actually you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. So just try different things, explore different avenues, and then you'll find something that you actually like, and then pursue that as a passion straight up.
Agreed. And also the kind of a build on it as well, and I've got it in my phone now, is I write everything down every day. I journal every day. So because you'll forget from 6 months ago or 3 months ago, you'll forget certain things. So when you're doing those, taking those risks, taking those bets, write down the things that you like, things that you don't like, and you can kind of like build your perfect job or your perfect career or your things that give you energy rather than take energy. Because most people get good at something, do it for a career, but if it's something that's an energy sapper, then actually it's a weakness. It's not really a strength, but your society and the world want you to do it more, even though inside you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm great at finance, but it's not giving me any energy or any inspiration.
And you know what? That could go into a whole nother topic, talking about the education system and how it's, it's they're trying to make everybody. I always feel like make everybody the same, and it's a one state, one prone approach, whereas everybody's different. But Alex, just wanted to say thank you for being a guest on the CBB Me podcast. And you know what? If people want to find out more about you or be able to hit you up on social media, the floor is yours. Where can they find more information or connect with you?
Always happy to help. I mentor a couple of people as well. So anyone that's building companies, trying to build teams, that just wants to hear about the journey in a bit more detail, practical advice, then yeah, please give me a shout. I'm on Alex James Ayin on LinkedIn, Alex__Ayin on Instagram and X. I was going to say Twitter, but X.
And is there anything?
Thanks, guys.
Is there anything that is there any other comments you want to make before we completely wrap up the podcast? Or is there any questions you'd like to ask?
I just want to say thanks to you both. Very inspirational, especially when in Manchester. I'm from Manchester, so seeing what you guys have built and what you continue to build. Don't underestimate the impact that's having on people, because we don't speak, do we now, as much as when I used to see you in Manchester. But I obviously see the updates, I see all the progress. So keep that going, because the impact you guys are having for a whole generation of people that look like us, that aren't from a traditional background, from a cultural standpoint, will be phenomenal. And I did say I was going to ask you a question. So are you ready for it?
Yep. Go ahead.
What has been the most difficult point in your life, and how did you overcome it?
There's been a lot.
I mean, I guess one thing that comes to my mind in terms of difficult is that, because from a young age I've always wanted to go into Formula One, let's say as a race driver. So I was always at a young age just thinking, it don't matter what you set your mind to, anything is possible. You can go out there, you can do it and whatnot. And I guess it was, so all the time when I was doing racing around the country, go-karting and whatnot, I was always wanting to, go up there, win, keep winning competitions, championships, and just move up the ladder and everything like that. But it was the struggles from obviously my experience with motorsport and karting and how expensive the journey was, is why the Blair Project came to be in a way. And I guess one of the difficult things that I had to accept is that sometimes it didn't matter how much money that we raised, because we weren't from a rich family or anything like that. So if we wanted to make the next step up in formula racing, it would have been 150 to 200 grand a year. And I guess it was at a young age accepting that sometimes that it might not matter how hard you try. It's almost like this things that you first set out to do within your career. Maybe that's not the path for you. So maybe it was at that time at a young age thinking to myself, well, you know what, if I'm not going to go into Formula One that I've set my mind to for so many years, what is it that I'm going to do with myself if I'm not a race driver? But it's just one of those things that I learned from a young age that it was almost in my mindset. I felt like it was almost like a bit of a failure, but in a way, I've now just taught myself that everything in life happens for a reason, and it's almost like my experiences from my experience at karting has set me on this new journey now with the Blair Project and what we're doing with inspiring young people around the country. We're doing our electric go-karting program, Proto EV, around the country, influencing the lives of a lot of young people. So I guess that's just a lesson in life from when I was younger, thinking that everything had to be in one basket, but just learning over time that, just everything in life happens for a reason. And whatever, there's always different pathways to careers that you can go into in life. And you just have to take advantage of the opportunities that are set out for you, essentially.
That topic, I think we could have a whole podcast on it, because the amount of people that set off on a trajectory, myself included, from a sports perspective, and then have to change to do something else, when a lot of your identity, your friendship group, what people think of you, and your success, and your abilities and skill sets are all associated to this thing, which now you either can't do because of injury or, like you said, financial reasons. That transition, people talk about it when they finish playing football or rugby or tennis, is difficult. But even as a youngster, if you're formative years, you've been known as this person, and then you've then got a switch. I don't think there's anywhere near as enough support or help or guidance with that. But just seeing your story and knowing it's possible, and there will be squiggly careers, I think is inspirational in and of itself.
So, in terms of my point of view, and I've never actually shared this story actually, so this is an exclusive. But the year 2019 was one of the most difficult years, personally and business wise, because we were delivering an educational contract, and we'd received some fund. Well, we'd done a contract with a large employer to train their apprentices. I won't name who they were, but yeah, we did the work, but we didn't get paid for almost 7 months. And so during that period, you're having to, use your own money to pay for things to keep the business going.
Yeah.
And while we were waiting during that period, we were like cash strapped. I mean, luckily for us, there was only myself, Blair, and Marilyn at the time. And I remember it got to a point when there was only like £1 in the account. And I
Wow.
had to go and take a job working at the post office over a
Wow.
Christmas period just to bring income in. But obviously, to make sure everything's stable, but to keep the business going. And during that time, it gave us time to think, change our objectives, and we went on a different direction where we noticed, well, what if we can still train adults as well? And I would honestly say, if it wasn't for the COVID-19 period, the Blair Project might not even exist, because from then on we adapted the business. Like I said, we started to train adults, but we came up with the idea of this new innovation center, innovation and skills training center that local businesses and people can use to innovate new products, to help us reach our net zero objectives. And through coming up with that idea, we received funding from a housing association to conduct a feasibility study, which allowed us to go out to New York and learn best practices from organizations out there. And we wrote that report, submitted it out to the wider world. And for us, our intention was never to run our own skills training center. It was to say this was the need, somebody go and make it happen. And luckily for us, there was a large property developer that was interested in taking our research and taking it to government and making something like this happen. And we were given the opportunity by this organization to run the skills training center. And they asked us, and we were like, is the Pope Catholic? Absolutely. We want to do this. And for that, our trajectory changed. And if we didn't have the I would call it the cojones to say, what, let's go and do it. Like, what, we're going to be persistent, be resilient, be determined. If we've just given up, the Blair Project wouldn't exist. And, the stuff that we're doing with young people, we wouldn't be able to benefit them and change lives like we're doing today. So yeah, that was something. But
Wow.
the biggest learning I learned from that was that, no matter how hard times could get, I've been there before. I know how to pull myself out of it.
Yeah.
And that's it. I feel like everybody at some point in life should hit rock bottom. Because you can go in two ways. It can break you, or it can make you and give you the fundamentals to say, you know what, I know what rock bottom feels like. I'm never going to go there again. And it's just up from there. So yeah, that's a personal story that I've never really shared with anyone. So now the whole world knows.
That is so important that you shared that, because I imagine because of the perception and the credibility, you would never ever want to share that story because you want it to be seen as successful, especially when you try to get investors. But the fact you've shared that, and even in that darkest moment, there was then a positive off the back of it. It always makes you think of just keep making plays. Like, life is going to be hard. Life will be hard. If you go into it knowing that, then when it is hard, you're already expecting it. Whereas when people don't think it's hard and things are going so well, and then it becomes hard, that's really difficult to change and adapt. But in those moments, if you can keep making plays, keep thinking about the next 24 hours, like I talked about earlier, that is what will get you out. If anything else, you put your best foot forward, you work hard, you're kind to other people, and you have strong values and you stick by them, you will become successful. There's nobody that does that over an elongated period of time that is not them successful. You guys are a proof point of that. But just stick to your principles, stick to making plays, and stick to hard work. And I promise you, it will get better.
Yeah. But also, what the coach that you mentioned, believe in yourself. When other people won't, other people don't, always believe in yourself, because you'll, you know, if you have that mindset, you can achieve anything.
Yeah.
Great ending. Great. Perfect way to end.
Great ending. No, again, Alex, thank you for being a guest on the CMEBB podcast. And, you know, there's so many more questions that I did want to ask, but we'll have to bring you back on a future episode.
100%. Thanks, gents.
Brilliant.
So thanks, Alex. Cheers. Take care.
Bye-bye. Blair.
Nile.
What did you think of the podcast today with Alex?
You know what? I don't even know where to begin. There was so many gems we went through in today's podcast episode, but just even from the beginning, when Alex was explaining about like his background and just his mindset. So obviously he had the passion for rugby, and then he had an injury, which he had to go into swimming and whatnot. And it's just one of the things that stuck out to me is he was speaking about consistency. And how when he was in this swimming, the polo team, having to wake up at like 5 a.m. at a young age as well, like 13, 14 years old, getting at 5 o'clock every morning to just like train with the team. And I believe he said his coach, Simon Jones, I believe his name was always pushing him and inspiring him to, you know, like be the best version of himself. I want also one of our past guests being Tony Ayin, who is Alex's dad as well, just inspiring them with that growth mindset of, you know what, you've done this well, but you can always do better. And you just got that parental figure, that idol who can basically push you that step farther. What are we all takeaways now?
I think, you know, the whole thing around, you know, sacrifice, you know, if you want to be the best, and you see it a lot in sport or business, or, you know, the top people are only in the positions that they're in because they've had to sacrifice a lot to get there.
Yeah.
Whether it's, you know, not spending time with family, maybe it's not going out and socializing with friends, or maybe it's there's a bunch of different things, but, you know, you have to sacrifice if you want to be the best. You need to put the hours in. So, you know, Alex was talking about from a very early age, even though when he was doing like water polo, you know, having to get up at 5 a.m., you know, going to the gym and training before even school started. And he, you know, it still encompasses into his life today that he's getting up early, he's putting the work in beforehand, then you're working long days. And, you know, the sacrifice you have to go into. I think, you know, I really loved the bit about how to build a high performing team.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's about, you know, taking the time to just be there for your staff. You know, even if they're going through struggles, just, I think having a sounding board and having like someone just to listen to stuff that they're going through, and helping them and guiding them and nurturing them on their journey within their roles.
It's just like essentially installing that like work culture, isn't it? Just getting like a group of people together. It's almost like how social change started. You just got a group of like-minded individuals all set on like one goal, and you're just all pushing each other to be the best versions of yourselves. And even what Alex was saying towards the end, it's like take more risks based on what you care about. So if you're passionate about something, or like it could even be a business idea or anything in general that you're passionate about, just make sure you just take that risk, because you never know what opportunities might come about when you just take a risk on something. So honestly, it's so inspiring. And I'm probably not doing the podcast that we were doing with Alex. It's just so many interesting topics and conversations, and there's so many questions, to be honest, that I wanted to ask Alex and go further on. So it would be great to get him on a podcast in the future.
No, well, he's already said he's definitely coming back on. And, you know, I loved how we even talk about from a standpoint of, you know, making your first successful hire, you know, the steps that you need to go down in order to do that. So make a list and say what does the business prioritize, and to get it to where you want to be, you know, plan it ahead, and then you can then decide, right, okay, this will be the first person that I hire, and make sure that their ethos and their mindset and attitude suit the business that you run. yeah, like it is. It's all about, achieving a high performance. And I love the conversation about AI and, how is that going to shape, and the automated, how is that going to shape the landscape of marketing? And, Alex was basically saying, it's aiding. They've been using AI for a very, very long time, and it's, it is there to be a guide rather than completely wipe out. But you can become an expert in AI, and if you're a marketer, you're gonna stem ahead. You're gonna be at the head of everyone else in the pack. But no, like you said, Blair, there's just so many gems that I am gonna go back and listen to this podcast, because there's so much you can learn. And yes, of course, Alex will be back on a future episode. But yeah, I hope you guys listening enjoyed the episode as much as we did. Maybe play it once, twice. There's so much there's so much more, so much gems in there. But like I said, that's all we've got time for today. If you have loved this episode, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Oh, and share this with friends, family, work colleagues. But also as well, do give us a follow on socials as well. So we are on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn at The Blair Project. And we're on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Get Me Motoring. So yeah, go and give us a follow. But that's all we've got time for, folks. Stay tuned for another exciting episode. Take care. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
If you've liked today's episode, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The Blair Project is on all major social media platforms, including Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube at The Blair Project. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Yes, we are on TikTok at Get Me Motoring. If you'd like to follow myself individually, I am on Instagram at Nile Henry, and also LinkedIn at Nile Henry as well.
And if you want to follow myself, I'm on Instagram as BlairHenry_97, and also on LinkedIn as just Blair Henry.
So we look forward to having you on the next episode. So stay tuned. Take care.
Until next time.